Commandment 10, Part 1. Exodus chapter 20, verse 17. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. As we start to look into what exactly this 10th commandment here means, we first need to understand this word, covet, because it is not something that we use or hear a lot, especially in modern times. Cambridge defines this word as to want or to have something very much, especially something that belongs to someone else. By this, whenever we look into this main verse, we begin to start to see this strong picture that is being depicted here. This kind of jealousy and envy over what someone has that you might want. This commandment here addresses our inner thoughts and desires. In ancient Israel, the word house didn't quite mean what it means for us now. Instead, back then, it meant closer to the entire household and the estate, and not just the physical dwelling or the building. The prohibition against coveting is highlighting the spiritual principle that sin begins with the heart, expanding this idea that sin is not simply just actions, but our innermost thoughts and desires too. Continuing through the example that we see listed here, the next one that it mentions is your neighbor's wife. It is stressing the importance of respecting that marital bond. This commandment here is able to emphasize the seriousness of lustful thoughts that Jesus is able to reissue and tell over again in verses like Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 28. It is all being done in order to safeguard the family unit. The next example that this verse mentions is man or maidservant. While looking at this from a biblical time period perspective, servants were something that were to be considered part of the household's wealth and status. It is also able to reflect the biblical principle of respecting the dignity and rights of all and other individuals, regardless of social statuses. The inclusion of servants in this commandment indicates that coveting is not just limited to material possessions, but it also extends to people and relationships. The next thing that we can find in this verse is talking about oxes or donkeys. Now, as part of a farming culture, they were something that was considered to be a more valuable asset. So when we look at this from a coveting standpoint, the desire to have them would indicate a desire for an increased wealth and productivity at the expense of another person's prosperity. Through this commandment here, we are encouraged as believers to trust in God's provision and to avoid the destructive nature that comes with envy. Finally, the last thing that it talks about in this verse is more of a simply blanket statement. Anything that belongs to your neighbor. It is able to serve as a comprehensive summary, effectively covering all aspects of coveting. It is able to highlight the importance of respecting other people's property and being content with one's own possessions. When we look at this command against coveting, it is a call to cultivate a heart of gratitude and trust in God's provision that He will be there and that He will take care of us. When we look into this main verse for this commandment over in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, while it does go through a list of examples of things that we are not supposed to be coveting, what the real point is we are supposed to be getting out of this verse is simply the general message that we are not supposed to be coveting at all. While yes, it does list specific examples of things to not covet, afterwards it gives the general anything that is your neighbor's. The purpose behind doing this is because it wants to give certain examples to get us thinking about all of the different ways that we could covet. However, it wants to let us know that anything could be taken as this kind of coveting action. It isn't just simply limited to this list. Like for the most part, most of us don't have any oxes or donkeys. So whenever we look at it, you would think it doesn't really necessarily apply to us, which is why it is meant as a kind of general list and not an all-inclusive. Covet is tied to our want. It is something that turns our attention from God and the things that are holy to anything that is of lesser value. It stems from the belief that we can be satisfied with something that is created, whether it was created by God or by man, instead of focusing on the Creator himself.